My name is Robert Key. I've lived in Salisbury for over 70 years for most of the time. The first 16 years of my life I was a teacher of economics, and I taught in Edinburgh, and I taught at Harrow School in northwest London for 14 years. And then I was selected as the Conservative candidate for my home city of Salisbury, and I served for 27 years. It was very daunting to be serving under Margaret Thatcher, but she was, as I learned, a wonderful leader and a wonderful person to be Prime Minister. All the stories you hear about her are mostly fictional and full of prejudice. She came from a humble background and she understood what made the country tick. But if you ever had a problem as a minister and you went to talk it through with her, she'd look you straight in the eye and ask you what was wrong. So it was a joy to work for her, and it was a joy to work for John Major. The difference was that Margaret Thatcher had a huge majority. John Major had to run the country on a minority government without a majority at every vote. So that's why he was sometimes perceived as dithering. Politics has changed, and I'd like to tell you a secret. Most people haven't noticed it, but the people running the main political parties know perfectly well. When I started, party politics was a mass membership thing. The Conservative Party had over 1 million members. In my constituency here in Salisbury, we had over 4,000 members. We had 44 Conservative branches in the villages and wards of the constituency. And that's true right across the country and in all parties. So we're not any longer mass membership organisations. We're organisations run by an ever smaller clique of people. That makes them more powerful and voters less powerful, and it's a bad idea. So it's changed because too much power is concentrated in the hands of too few people. My own party has swerved to the right, and I'm still a Conservative. I will always be a Conservative, but I cannot possibly support some of the things that the current Conservative government has been doing, like cutting overseas aid, cutting universal credit, adding national insurance to the poorest people as well as the richest. I mean, who would have thought that any government would seek to criminalise the Royal National Lifeboat Institution for saving people at sea? So there are all sorts of things, ways in which it's changed. The way politics is done has changed so much, and not for the better. And one way we can move out of that is, in my view, to change and reform our electoral system so that we have proportional representation instead of winner takes all, first past the post. In the last general election, 71% of the votes cast didn't make any difference to the outcome. We need to change that so that every vote counts. And at the moment there are people in Salisbury constituency who are Labour supporters. They say, why should I bother to vote? It won't make any difference. Safe Conservative seat. Do you know that's wrong in a democracy? And we have to turn democracy on its head in this country. We really do. So we have to change it. And we have to say, if we're going to be a 21st century democracy, we need to be like other 21st century democracies, and we need to share power, not hoard it. And in other words, yes, having coalitions, not just at Westminster, but in all our city councils, county councils, town councils. It's a sensible and grown-up way of performing the duty of politicians. I watched the debate at the Labour Party conference on proportional representation, and there were remarkable speeches, a lot of young people speaking in favour of change, and only 2 or 3 people actually speaking against the motion to adopt PR. So over 80% of the constituency Labour parties in the country are in favour of change. But when it came to a card vote as opposed to a show of hands, the motion was blocked by the trade unions. That is a real challenge for the Labour Party, because if they're careful, the Labour Party will never be elected if they can't reform. What about the Conservative Party? Yes, the Conservative Party could change, but I suspect it only will change when it's been defeated at the polls. I regret that very much. So I am hopeful. I do think that even the Conservative Party in the long run can change, and I think it would be in the interests of the Conservative Party to reform and support proportional representation as the only way it's going to survive. Politics always swings, but it usually swings about a point in the middle somewhere. And the only Labour government we've seen in the past decade or two has been Tony Blair's, when New Labour decided they'd got to reclaim the centre ground as well as the left. And it was a great success for many years. The Labour Party now is trying to find a new way forwards, and it's obviously very painful. But I do think that both parties will swing back to the centre. I think that's where most people want it to be in this country. There are always going to be left-wingers and right-wingers. We live in a democracy. We don't shoot people for their views. Let's decide that we do want to have some sort of proportional representation where every vote counts, every person's views are listened to and heard, and everyone feels part of the way in which we are governed, as opposed to just feeling my vote will never matter here. Somebody once said in New York, it's time the world grew up. It's time Britain grew up. And that's why we need to change.